This video is on our new product development process, and this is commonly called phase 0 because it comes before the discovery of a normal project and is the innovative and creative part of the process that feeds into something that is truly a new product, a whole new concept, something new to the marketplace. So let's take a look at the NPD, new product development process. Overall, there are two parallel and forces going on, or activities that are actually drawn here wrong. But we have one where the creative and technical part is kind of pushing out to the marketplace, and then the market assessment is pulling in from the marketplace back into us. And then the two of them work together and eventually converge into something that is truly innovative and also wanted by the marketplace. Okay, let's talk a little bit about terminology. There's a lot of strange terms involved, and we'll define these kind of as we go along. Converging concepts, diverging byproducts, evaporating scope, and maybe we should talk about some of these. Converging concepts, I think we just talked about that, where things start coming together. Diverging byproducts is where something spins off. As you're developing something, you realize you have to come up with a tool or something to do the development work, and that in itself is something innovative that we can sell. And that's the thing to really watch out for, because that's where the real innovation comes from. Evaporating scope is where the thing just gets simpler and simpler as the design gets more elegant. Pliability, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Time to market. Concurrent engineering is the ability to, for example, like the way they build buildings in Las Vegas. They design the footprint and the overall shell of the building, and as they're building that, they design and engineer the interior. And that's requires a little bit of coordination, but that's really an effective way of doing software developments, particularly when it's innovative and we don't necessarily know where we're going as we start the project. Okay, and we have opportunity cost, the golden triangle. We'll talk about those in a bit here. Emergence, magic numbers, purposeful, stage gates, steel threads, cross threads. Stage gates are essentially places in the early stages of innovation where we make a decision. We're at a certain stage and we have to make a go, no-go decision if we're going to proceed. And we put those in there so that we don't get something too far ahead of ourselves. Steel threads, they're used in concurrent engineering where we lay down something that is required and that can't be changed if we're going to start producing something as it's being designed. So for example, we have to define the footprint or the foundation of a building, what that is going to look like before we can build the building. Everything else can be dynamic. We can figure out what size the rooms are in size and so on, but we can't leave the dimensions of the overall shell of the building up for grabs. So that would be steel threads. Cross threads, that's a little bit more complicated. We'll get to that. Criticality, critical mass, pro forma, that's referring to the financial stuff where we're going to go out and project how many of these things we're going to sell and for how much. And barrier to entry is the market, what it is that's going to take us to get an innovative product into the marketplace, what is standing in our way. Oh boy, penetration is getting into the marketplace and how we're going to actually break that barrier to entry. Rough cut is capacity planning, essentially a pro forma for our development team. And architected, and that is about it for those words. We'll touch on more of those here in a little bit. There are three types of products in new product development, and Variant has all three of these. Incremental products, this is where we're doing improvements, repositioning of an existing product. This is like BP Launcher, and we're expecting maybe less than 50% of a gain in terms of what that product brings to the marketplace. So people aren't going to expect a huge change in what they're getting, but they're going to have a somewhat improvement in productivity by having these new features and making sure that it's positioned correctly with what the market's wanting. Breakthrough products, this is really where our thrust is going to be. These have a significant barrier to entry. They can be very complex, and the marketing and selling of them is as innovative as the product themselves. And here we're expecting a 5 to 10 times performance improvement So if you buy this thing, you should be expecting 10 times more productivity, and you should be spending 30 to 50% less money in acquiring the product than what you would have before. We're looking for a market disruption here. This is something that changes the world, and these are the types of products that are truly innovative. This is a data dictionary product did this, and we're looking for something like a part inquiry to do something close to that, I believe. Certainly the advanced dictionary and bringing meaning to data is going to be a breakthrough product. Platform products, these have hidden barriers, and essentially all they are is a way to prepare for tomorrow. So they are deploying an architecture for next generation products. We're laying down process groundwork and market readiness. So, for example, the original e-dictionary was really just a precursor to an OLAP product that was a multi-dimensional pivot table, and it was a little bit ahead of its time. So we wanted to put something out there that was Crystal Reports compliant, that got them thinking about having metadata and being able to look at two-dimensional data. And then we thought it would not be much of a step to then bring them to three-dimensional data using the Crystal Reports analysis tool at the time. So that would be a platform product, and essentially getting ready to have a breakthrough product right on top of it. New product development outcomes, call them deliverables, whatever you want to. There has to be a purpose and a need, and that is going to be part of the visioneering statement. Product definition and direction, criticalities, things that are essential for this thing to be truly innovative, and those can be very subtle points sometimes, but that is what the architecture is about, and those may be realigned as the market comes back and corrects us, but we can't just take anything for granted or brush over those. Performa would be again the budget, if you will, how many we're going to sell, how much they're going to go for, that kind of thing, and then an impact analysis to the organization. That's really for Rand, in terms of what are we going to have to do to motivate to mobilize ourselves for that. IT infrastructure, new software, training, those kinds of things. Okay, where does innovation come from? All sorts of different places, but here's just a few noteworthy ones. Internally, unexpected events, incongruities when we're wrestling with things that just don't make sense, process gaps, when we find that we have a problem finding things, most likely our clients are going to have problems finding things, and structural changes. So as we, I think that's a structural changes, as we have to bring in different people or change the way we work, that again reflects what our clients are going to be experiencing, because they're going to be doing the same type of work that we're doing. We're just doing it at an abstraction level higher. External opportunities, the landscape of the marketplace changes. That's where we really need to get back into the marketplace to get our, our thumb on that. And perceptions and trends. We need to read more trade mags and things like that, because the perceptions of the ERP industry are probably as important as the actual landscape changes. And then when new things come out, new knowledge, like Salesforce was a great example of that. So when we have something that's new out there, what do we want to do with that? And it may be that we want to embrace it. It may be that we want to not embrace it. We might want to have a countermeasure against it and say that it's superfluous or something. So but we do need to keep abreast of those things. All right, let's get into a little bit more detail here. And this is the phase 0 phases, for I guess lack of better terminology here. There really aren't concrete phases, and I don't want to use these literally, because we're not going to get into scheduling this to this granularity, but I do want you to kind of understand what all is involved. But you start with like ideas, screening those ideas, start conceptualizing something, do analysis, essentially it's a business analysis, and then you make an assessment of the marketplace, and then you productify, I don't know what we call that, make it ready for standard as a standard process, standard product. Okay, and then there's some opportunity. There's some gates in here as well. But so ideas would be looking at possibilities, customer requests, looking at market requirements, market needs, brainstorming sessions, looking at trends, emergence of something that's coming out of the marketplace or out of something that we're doing, and dissonance, cognitive dissonance. So those are the kind of things we just talked about. Those are where the ideas come from, and we need to start capturing those in lists as much as possible so that we really don't lose some of this stuff, because we have a lot of great ideas and they tend to get lost, but it's not to be confused with features, of course. And then we go through a screening process where we see if those are technically feasible, do some market testing, essentially talk to people about them. What would you think about, have these ideas that we have about for the data dictionary, and then do a competitive analysis or an assessment to see, what other people are doing and what kind of success they have with that. All right. At that point, there's an opportunity gate where we decide, is there an opportunity here that's going to come out of this that we're going to want to invest in? And if it's yes, then we keep on going. Otherwise, these things just kind of stay back there in this possibilities world. That's kind of what the possibilities portal was all about. So concepts, and this is really conceptualizing and doing some design work, doing a proof of concept, just roughing something up, doing a roadmap to see where we would go with this product over a number of years. Affinities would be looking at our existing products and services and see how they how they match up. Do they dovetail together, or how would that look? The value proposition is very important at this point, figuring out what it is that we're really selling to them, and then the benefits of that. So the value proposition and benefits ties together, and then the feature list really comes out of that. So that feature list should be down here. Intellectual property, what in there is something that we would innovate ourselves and be considered trademark or patentable, that type of thing. We wouldn't do that, but we'd still identify it as an intellectual property. And then we would look at its potential in terms of its sales and growth and so on, and then run some scenarios on that to see how that would play out. So from all that's really just heavy-duty design work. Then we go into a business analysis phase where we look at the cost structure to see how much it would cost to build this thing, to develop it, how we'd price it, maybe do some strategic planning in terms of our strengths, weaknesses, those kinds of things down here, and then sales forecast, kind of investment are we talking, return on investment, contingency planning, and then organizational impact. So these are all just kind of a laundry list of things that can go in there, not necessarily all those things, and there's even more. Okay, so at that point we say something's coming out of this. Are we ready to do something? Yeah. Okay, we've got our ducks in a row. We could actually do something. We're ready to go out and see if this is viable, and this may be more of a viability assessment where we're going to go out and say, take it to a couple of customers, do some beta testing, maybe just a focus group, whatever it's going to be, but actually get it in customers' hands to see, what kind of risk we have involved in terms of, maybe we have to open up this big Pandora's box for support. We don't, that could be. Does it get any traction? Does it actually go someplace, or does it just get talk? That kind of thing. And from that, we have our go, no-go gate. Are we going to build this thing? Are we going to commit to it? And if yes, then we have to go out and do our traditional phase 1 and forward, which would come right out of this, where we define what resources we need, any suppliers that we need to have. If we're going to use subcontractors, for example, I guess we don't do much printing anymore, but that would be that case. Any engineering of the process itself we have to do, sales literature, documentation, and project planning. And from that, then, those would flop over and become the project plan, and we would go into our normal, at least for the 1.0 version of this, our normal product development. And then this also then goes off into a life cycle management piece, which we'll cover here in a little bit. All right, the little diagram down here is kind of showing why this can be a little bit spastic. Okay, so this is the part that can drive people nuts, but if you realize which sub-phase you're in here, it makes a little bit better sense. But if you go from diverging to converging concepts, you're either narrowing in or you're broadening out. So ideas, the whole idea is that you're diverging. You're trying to get more and more ideas, more and more breadth to it. As you screen, you're going to converge down and get much more focused. As you start conceptualizing, you're back to diverging, but not quite as much, and bring in, how are you going to attach to other products, its affinities and value prop and so on. As you do the business analysis, you're going to reel it in again, not quite as much this time though, but you're going to make it so that it's practical, and then you do the assessment, and that can go really way down here, or it can loop up here depending on what the marketplace does. And if it does this, then we have to kind of go back here again and reconceptualize it, because the conceptualization wasn't divergent enough. And then from there, we should start leveling out here as we become a standard product. We should converge into something that is fairly level loaded, and this spastic cycling kind of goes away, but this is a very desirable thing. There are several different ways of looking at this innovation and the way it's viewed and presented through different levels of abstraction: conceptual, logical, physical. I think those are familiar to us. And then it gets implemented in a presentation layer, the GUI, the part that the user actually interacts with. The business layer, and this is where all the logic is, and the actual application, so to speak, and the database layer itself where the data is stored. Certainly there's a lot more to it than that, and we're going to get into it when we get into configuration management. And then, likewise, there are more elements here than what I've got presented, but I thought this would get us started where we have the straw man, the piglet, epics, user stories, features. This is kind of where we're struggling with right now, and seeing what comes after that. So I kind of left it a short list for the time being. When we're bringing this into a standard process, once the innovation has moved all the way through the feasibility and has made the business case, and we've decided to make this a real project, and it's gone through the go, no-go gate, then it's really time to start drawing upon standards, so we're not doing things from scratch. And back in the conceptual part where the design is conceptualized and so on, these are already have been taken into account. So that's going to be part of the leveraging, particularly when we see some affinities between products and services, so we can take standard practices and so on that are already in place and leverage those for other products. That is a huge part of the design process. So we want to make sure that we capitalize on that by actually doing it. And Eric has a better drawing of this, but as we bring this thing out of the clouds and into something that is not a square yet, not square edges, but is getting closer to something that is physically in reality, we apply our methods, which are different ways of doing things. So, for example, for importing into a database, there may be 3 or 4 ways of doing that, and those are documented there. And our practices would be the way that Verant does business. Our capabilities, which is our ability to have like different programming languages that have, some can import text, some can import SQL, different things like that. Our style guide, starter documentation, our knowledge base, the starter application, and common libraries for like Team Developer and WinBatch, naming conventions, which are really in the starter app, algorithms, templates, samples, and so on. Specifically, we have like one of our practices is playing well with visual. And we just call out that strategy by name. So the designer is going to say, when we implement, for example, perhaps an import routine for EDI, we're not going to have to go through and labor over all the different ways of doing it and everything in the universe, and then go through the methods and then the pros and cons and all this kind of stuff. We're just going to say, use the Dave Lane strategy. And then we go and find that practice, and it'll be detailed, and we all know what we're talking about, and that's what makes this thing really work. Okay, so those are going to be these named strategies. We also have plays, which are more of a marketing thing, and we're going to get into that when we talk about those in the strategic planning, but it'll be a way of marketing something, a way of capitalizing on an opportunity or a gap in the marketplace that is kind of like a football strategy. So that takes place over in the market as well as it does here in the actual implementation phase. Methods and practices for calling functions, we kind of talked about that. Actually, we talked about all this, so let's skip right over that, okay? All right. So there are some major challenges for a company to get innovation and new product development going in a substantial way to secure long-term growth. It's important that these challenges are fully addressed and understood throughout the organization so that it continues to flourish. The workforce must tolerate the chaos created by lack of instructions, procedures, or experience in the presence of development engineers. The required time might exceed what was predicted, further disrupting the production schedule. Contrast this with the keys to success in the mainstream operations: predictable, repetitive, uninterrupted run times, rigid equipment and procedures, and detailed documentation. They're quite opposite, but they are both critical to having an innovative company that has long-term prosperity. Okay, for another thing here is like in the sales function, you're predominantly occupied with the tactical parts of it, increasing sales revenue, calling, things like that, whereas in new product development, it's really all about evaluating our structural issues within the sales process itself to see if we actually have the ability to penetrate into that market and be able to have the strategy and the expertise and the resources to execute that strategy. Okay? All right. This one you need to make sure you're reading it directly because it's kind of funny. Idea generation requires a supportive organizational culture. Ideas and the people who develop them are fragile, and if the organization does not support them, they will not develop. A supportive culture requires that the organization allow for experimentation and failure. In other words, not every idea will be commercially viable, but mistakes are to be learned from, and learning should be celebrated. Okay. And a couple more here. An organization developing new products is comparable to an orchestra. We seem to come across this quite a bit. Musicians usually play together in an orchestra only for a set of performances of a given program before disbanding. This remarkable achievement is made possible by the role of a conductor. Compare this with new product development. There is no leader to bring together the performance of the various parts of the company for the only purpose of developing new products. If a natural leader emerges, he is likely a peer of the function leaders or one level below that and has no formal authority over them. Clearly, this is a model that requires accommodations to succeed. Okay, next up is going from the culture of a cash cow business or one product line business to that of a growth business through new products is an evolution more likely to succeed under the guidance of someone who has experienced it. Few companies want to discuss the practical details of what makes them successful at innovation, and often those who participate in the process have never experienced another way to do it. Okay, and just some final thoughts here. The fuzzy front end is really that part that fits between the first consideration of an idea until we enter that structured development process. This whole cloudy area in here, we're going to just leave kind of cloudy and fuzzy. And it has to be aligned to the strategic plan. That's one thing we haven't really talked about, which means that both this needs to accommodate the strategic plan, and the strategic plan will likely have to be revised to accommodate this. They have to all be orchestrated together for this thing to work. Okay, the fuzzy front end can take over 50% of the overall development time for a product. That's something that most people are not aware of. It is an entrepreneurial act. It is not a single event, it's a process, it's an ongoing thing, and there is no one really who leads it. It's something that is organic to the organization. Generally, not for the faint of heart, that's really more of, not for somebody who doesn't like roller coasters and chaos and wicked rides, because this is really the essence of this front end part. And you really have to have been there, have gone through this and find out how it works. It's something that is best experienced, not learned. Okay, so what are the important things here? The idea, the goals behind the product, the strengths of the product, the market, return on investment, improving ourselves, and learning continuously. But most important is to be nimble and change directions when something emerges that was unintended.